Pop, what's going on, man?
Son, how you doing?
Another day living the dream, man. If you're wondering, well, we'll get to it in a bit, but there's new news. There's some new command
Breaking news.
breaking news. The Commanders have hired a new defensive coordinator, Daronte Jones. He was the defensive passing games coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. He's also been their DB's coach. I guess from DB's coach to defensive passing game coordinator is a promotion. So he worked his way up there. At least it's how most teams do it. Um, and he's been working under Brian Flores in Minnesota, which obviously has been one of the best, if not the best defenses in the league. I think officially ranked number 3 in total defense in 2025, among the top 10 in takeaways 3 times while Jones was there. It's an exciting hire. So, Pop, right away, man, just getting right into it, not wasting any time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But we're talking ball today. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, you dove right in, man. We went,
Why
we
waste
went
any
right.
time, man?
Went feed for. I didn't even get a "What's up, Pop?" or comment on my attire today.
Well, I figured the attire comment is tied into the news. You can't comment on the attire without the news. So please let the people know why you've got McNamara on every article of clothing on your body right now.
Representing, man. So Daronte Jones is a fellow McNamara alum. A few
Very
years after
excited.
me, about 10 years or so after me. I guess I aged myself there, but
Maybe he's
so
got a big
yeah,
brother.
maybe. But yeah, exciting. I mean, obviously, there's lots of reasons to be excited about this hire, but I might not be the most biased guy in terms of, or I might be biased, I guess, in terms of being excited about Daronte Jones. It's crazy to think that Bishop McNamara Grad is the defensive coordinator of our beloved Washington Commanders. So, wonder, good chance he grew up a fan. We'll see. Sometimes people in the area go a different way, but yeah, lots to be excited about. I think with this hire, interesting. We didn't see it coming for sure. Another first year coordinator, so we'll get into talking about that. I will say, stay tuned because we will talk. We will be reacting to the championship games and the Super Bowl matchup later in the pod. So stay tuned for that. You'll see the outline up on the side, so you can see the different bookmarks of what's coming up. But yeah, what's your take on all of it?
I love it. I think it's a great hire, and I think we'll talk a little bit more. There's a topic about this later in terms of his experience, but I think it's a great hire. I think everybody's got to get a first shot at some point. All of the guys who I guess we'll just talk about the experience thing now because it's just directly tied to my reaction
Right.
to it. Um, he's worked for all the best
He's
defensive
got tons
minds
of
in the
experience.
league right now.
Yeah.
Um, he's gonna come here and hopefully run Flores' system. I've heard some guys like Kime say he's gonna bring the pressure package for sure, which I think is awesome. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
He runs a lot of zone, which I think better suits the talent that we currently have, or lack thereof, on defense. And I think that's my overall take is you could have had Jezu coaching the defense last year. You don't have the players. You don't.
Yeah.
So, Peters, the ball is in your court, brother. It's on you now. You've got the coaches.
Totally agree.
I think this is a guy that if he went to Baltimore, he went to Philly, he went anywhere that has some amount of talent in defense. Obviously, Philly's loaded. I think anybody would be successful there. But if he went to Baltimore, middle of the road talent defensively, I think he'd make them a really good defense. Can he do that here with the talent that's available right now? Absolutely not. Can he at least get the talent that's available now to be average? I think that's probably the hope. And then you add a couple more pieces, and maybe he could turn a guy like Frankie Louvu back into a dynamic playmaker. Maybe he could get the most out of a guy like Duron Payne, who reports are early, but reports are indicating is going to be around for next year. Um, Maybe he can get more out of Mikey Samerstill, find a home for him. That was my first thought was Mikey can maybe get back to what we saw out of him his rookie year. Maybe he could find some use for him. I'm sure, honestly, I'm sure he's at the center of this of this interview process is what's your plan for a guy like Samerstill? What's your plan for a guy like
Right.
Amos? These are guys that
Yeah.
we've invested heavily in. High second round picks in both of these guys. So what is he planning to do with them? I'm sure that's part of the reason he got the job. Um, I also love it because Dan Quinn didn't just go hire his favorite assistant from
Yep.
Dallas. I
Yep.
love that. I love that. There was talk about the guy that's in Chicago right now that we wanted. His name starts with the A. It's escaping me. There was talk of that. I did not like that because of the Dallas connections. I know he was successful in Chicago, but it was the same. It's Joe Jr. 2.0 is what it felt like to me, even though it wasn't. He was successful in Chicago, and I know he actually played here. But doesn't matter. He's not going to be the guy. Daronte Jones is the guy, and I think it's a great. I think it's a great hire.
Well,
What do you make of the experience thing?
I think he comes with a lot of experience. I mean, it's not the same thing as David Blau, who's a 30-year-old, young up and comer. This guy's been in the league for a long time. He's coached against under some really good coaches, not just Flores. But I think we would all agree Brian Flores was the number one seed of defensive coordinators, right? Like if you land him, you've just hit the jackpot, and you're going out and you're getting his second in command, who's studied under him. And what has also impressed me is the reaction from all of the Minnesota Vikings reporters and the players and everyone talking about. He did interview with 5 different teams for the DC role. That's the report. I don't know whether there was any noise about other offers. I think some of those teams, like one of them, might have been Green Bay, and they went a different direction. Which you understand that. But I think I think that you never know until someone gets in the role. He was defensive coordinator at LSU, which some people might say is college, but is probably as close to a pro program in college as you can get. So he has called plays. He does have experience doing that. I think a lot of it is how you scheme it up. And I also wonder if Brian Flores was interviewed by the Washington Commanders. And I wonder if there was some name drops there to go like, look, I think I might end up staying in Minnesota, but you should really have a look at, this Daronte Jones kid. And I can't imagine that wasn't part of it, because I think Brian has a good relationship with DQ. And there was another thing that people said. There's a couple things that I think are interesting, maybe different points. One is, DQ's more of a D line guy. Jones is more of a back end guy. So there's a good complementary there in terms of a defensive head coach and what you're getting. The second thing is, who put belt to culo on us 31-0? So I wonder, not just the fact that you're getting that D coordinator, second in command that dominated you. Could he help David Blau out? Could he help Jaden Daniels out and saying, look, this is how we took advantage of you. This is why we were able to perform so well against your offense. And this is what you need to try to change up to prevent that happening again. So I kind of like that aspect of things as well.
Yeah, it's a great point. I like that as well. And I think ultimately, like, the next kind of question is like, is Dan Quinn taking too big a risk with both a first year offensive coordinator and a first year defensive coordinator? And my point is, either, I don't think that should factor in to your hiring process. Get the best guy for the job, period. And if you think Daronte Jones, who I think there's a better case that Daronte Jones is the best guy for the job than there is Blau is the best guy for the job, and I like the Blau hire. Um, I think is a better case for Daronte Jones. I think I'd put the Blau hire at like an 8.5. I'd put Jones at 9.5 or a 10. I love the hire. Um, and I think, but I don't think one has much to do with the other. What do you think, Pop?
Well, I think that ultimately I'm with you. I think that you want to hire the best guy. There's part of me that's wondering with Blau, like, I just wonder if that was part of the Cliff equation, right? That they just didn't want this guy to leave the building. And maybe that was a little bit of background stuff, but it was just sort of like, we got this kid who we really don't want to leave the building, and the only way to really keep him around is to make him OC. And we're not 100% satisfied with what we're getting out of Cliff, who's still without a job, by the way, which is pretty interesting and maybe telling, maybe not. And, I think that I see it in the corporate world sometimes where you tend to just want to always go for experience and years of experience. Someone knows what to do. And sometimes you hire that young person that has less experience, but the right attitude. And you can just tell that they're ascending in a way that, they bring a certain level of energy to the situation. And like I said, I mean, you've got to start somewhere. And Jones is someone that's got a tremendous amount of experience in doing it. I just honestly, of the candidates that we know of that could have come here, I think he'd be at the top of my list, and not just because he's a McNamara grad, just because of his qualifications. If you sit down and you break down his qualifications, they're really good. Now, honestly, it's wait and see. I like what you said about Adam Peters, right? We've got to get more talent on this defense. It's also going to be interesting to see what Daronte Jones does from a staff perspective, any changes that he makes there. You've got some, pretty entrenched DQ guys in this staff. Is he going to want to shake that up? Um, but I also give DQ a lot of credit for going out and getting a guy that he hasn't coached with before. I mean, I have to give him a lot of credit for one, going younger and going in this different direction, because what he's done is he's worrying less about himself and more about the team and trying to set them up with some future potential, great coaches. Now, is there risk in that? Yes, of course, there's some risk in that for sure.
Yeah, but I think it's not the mindset that we've seen former head coaches here fall into the trap of, which granted was a much more volatile situation when Dan was around, but like don't hire the guy that could replace you, right? You saw that problem with Jay Gruden, was he was never gonna hire a prolific defensive mind because, well, Jay was on the hot seat by the time he started hiring defensive coordinators. You saw it with Ron towards the end of his tenure. It was like, go and get a guy that is not going to replace you and like throw a Hail Mary that he could save your job. To the I think it's a good thing. And I think the last thing that I'll say before we move on, I do want to make a quick note of some of the other head coaching stuff around the league.
Sure.
But before we move on, I think in my opinion, I think there might have been a little bit of a come to Jesus moment with Harris, Magic Johnson, the decision making side of the ownership group, right? Not just the guys that put up bucks, and the general managing side with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. That was like we might not be in a position to re-rack this whole thing in a year, regardless of how this goes. And you know what, D? Go get go get something that we can build. Like let's restart the rebuild after these last 2 years. And we had lightning in a pan the first year. Last year was a disaster on the injuries front. It's almost hard to evaluate what we do and don't have. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. It's probably a 7 to 9 win team as is. Go see if you can achieve that this year, and if you can, you've got another couple of years. I think this, if
Yeah.
anything, could be an indicator that Dan Quinn is safer internally. If we're assuming that everybody knows what they're doing and things are operating well, which I'm not ready to say that that's not the case yet. But I think if anything, this might be an indicator that Dan Quinn is a little bit safer and is a little more going to operate as like a junior GM CEO than a ball guy, and the way that that's the way they want to set up the organization. I
The
think that's could be an indicator of that.
truth is, if you're confident in what you're doing, and you know you can go with decisions like this because he's not putting himself in front of the team, right? He's putting the team first. And I think, like I said, you got to give him credit. And I agree with you. I don't think that this is a boom or bust situation where he's got a playoff or bust situation, right? I think if you have an 8 or 9 win team, but you show progress and Jaden's playing better and Blau is coaching them up, and the defense improves. Defense goes from 32nd to 20th, and you start to see that upward trajectory, and you see some of the new additions that we don't even know yet for 2026 make contributions. That they're going to run it back. Crazier things can happen. Could David Blau get a head coaching job after 1 year as the offensive coordinator? We've seen it before. It's those types of things seem to happen in the NFL, but probably not, right? So you could set a foundation here for a 2 or 3 year run, right? And I think, I also think that Devontae Jones it's going to be his defense. I don't think it's going to be Dan Quinn's defense. And so, that's a good thing too, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean that's not the guy you hire if you just want a stooge there to
No,
do your own thing. I
no,
hope, but it
no,
doesn't read that way off the beginning.
no.
Looking around the league here, if you're ready to pivot, I think
Yep,
you've covered this.
yep.
Dare I say, pretty darn well. I think that was a pretty good segment.
Yeah, we're almost on
Um,
time too. Wow,
yeah,
that
I mean,
never
if you
happens.
guys are enjoying it, listen, the boys are having a rare moment of being concise, clear headed. Hit the subscribe button,
It could
reward
go
us
off
for
the
it.
rails at any moment, but for
Will
now,
go off the rails at some point, and that's the fun part. So stick around. Um, but going back to your Cliff point, he interviewed with the Ravens and the Titans for head coaching jobs, both of which have went other directions. Titans hiring Sala, Ravens hiring Jesse Minter. There have been a few splashy head coach hirings since, but the three vacancies that are available are Arizona, who he ain't going back to Arizona,
yeah,
Cleveland, and the Raiders. And neither the Raiders nor the Browns have interviewed him. And one of those jobs is probably going to be Kubiak. Cleveland is likely going to go with Schwartz. Believe it or not, Cleveland has actually interviewed a different Commanders coach for their head coaching interviews. Anthony
Lynn,
Lynn was
yeah,
interviewed with the Browns. So that's an interesting one. Um, but overall, I guess the biggest news is probably Pittsburgh. Well, the Ravens hired Jesse Minter. I don't know if we discussed that on the pod. Pittsburgh hired Mike McCarthy. I know for sure we have not discovered that one. And the Bills hired Joe Brady. So they promoted internally their offensive coordinator. What sticks out to you out of those three? Does anything stick out really quick? We don't have to get a full breakdown here, but just quick
yeah. I mean, I
takes.
think McCarthy to Steelers is the most. I would say, I don't know what the right word, controversial. I guess a lot of Steelers fans reacted negatively to that. I mean, he's a Pittsburgh guy. He was crying in the press conference. I don't know if you saw that, talking about his emotional attachment to Pittsburgh. Look at his record. It's pretty darn good. I've never been the biggest fan of Mike McCarthy, but you can't fault him for winning. He won in a pretty dysfunctional situation in Dallas. You know, he's got a Super Bowl ring. I think that, maybe that hire makes more sense than we think. So I think that's the um, headline for me is that one. The other ones, I mean, I don't really have anything good or bad to say about any of it. Like I'm not overwhelmed by any of the hires, and we had a pretty good time talking about John Harbaugh last week, and that was got some good reaction from folks. One commenter asked if we were rage baiting by our takes there, but yeah, I think the McCarthy is the big one for me.
Yeah, I think, and you know what? We sure could be rage baiting. We're not intentionally, but if it makes you angry enough to comment, then great. Welcome to the internet, baby. I'm Team McCarthy. I think that's a great hire. I think it's kind of criminal. He's been underrated. He's the dude's a winner, and that's an offensive mastermind that has top five offenses. Believe it or not, we give a certain guy around here a lot of flack for being a defensive mastermind with a bottom five defense. That's an offensive mastermind that when he coaches your ball club, you're going to have a top five offense. So who do they figure out a quarterback? Who does he develop? Because he did a great job. I mean, Dak played his best ball with McCarthy, and I think Rodgers played his best ball with McCarthy as well. Um, so there's that. The Joe Brady hire, I think, which I mentioned earlier. I think it's the right hire there as well. Um, I would have loved to
Really
see Mike
interesting that
McCarthy
it's someone in
there,
the
but
building. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's the right call. I think I equate it to when Baltimore should have let go of Harbaugh and promoted McDonald. Said it at the time, say it again now. I think they are doing the opposite in Buffalo. I think they're doing the right thing. Although I do think that ownership group is it's giving me happy Thanksgiving flashbacks for sure with those owners and the press conferences there. And I don't like any of that, but I do think Brady's the right hire.
Yeah, and I think in Baltimore going with a defensive coach, I think that's good. I think they need to reconnect with their identity, right? And
Yeah,
get that defense. We didn't it was a point I wanted to make earlier related to the Commanders hire, but look at what the top four teams in the championship games all have in common. They all have really, really, really good defenses.
defense
And
is back.
yes, you see a situation in Seattle where Los Angeles, I thought just McVay called such a brilliant game because they were having to fight for every inch. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. But, defense is still a huge point if you want to contend. And, I think that's why we're all saying that. So I think for Baltimore and hopefully for the Commanders, I think for Baltimore returning to their identity and for the Commanders once and for all finally building a championship level defense, I think is going to be key in terms of the futures, right? Because you're going to be okay with Lamar, you're probably going to be okay with Jaden Daniels and whatever weapons we add there. But it's going to be the defense that I think makes the difference in both of those organizations.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look, I think it's just a trend across the league. Like, if you look like back to a few years ago, like if you look at 2022, 2023, it was offense. It was the Chiefs offense and the Bengals, and then you had the Eagles and the 49ers, and it was all just about offense. And even as good as the 49ers defense was, it wasn't enough, right?
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, you move it forward a few years and it's like Patriots, Broncos, Seahawks, Rams, all four of those teams now, the Rams and the Seahawks both have great offenses. And the Patriots, they made their money with their offense this year, but it's been the defense that's kept them alive in the playoffs. And all four of those teams have good, really, really good defenses. So that's been the theme. I think that's where the league is kind of like recorrected. Things have gotten back to more defensive football at the end of the year, and at the end of the day, um, getting into the Super Bowl here, I think that is what got the Patriots thus this far has been their defense, and their defense has turned it around and really stepped up in the later half of the year. I think unexpectedly to most people, they've always had a decent defense. They've had a good defense. You're gonna have a good defense with the Mike Vrabel team, but
right.
they've had like a their defense has won them all three of their football games that they've had to play in the playoffs.
Yep. Yep.
It's
Yep.
been the most interesting part. But before we get into the Super Bowl, we got a little fun, little kick hots of the week. You want to hit that now, Pop?
Got to.
Yeah. So first, just two crazy kick hots in terms of people voting and selections. Um, First one, Bill Belichick. Now you got to help me out a little bit here, Pop. He's an eight-time Super Bowl winning head
I
coach.
think it's a couple with the Giants as an assistant.
Okay, a couple with the Giants as an assistant. He won six with the Pats. That's what he's best
Yeah.
known for.
Yeah.
Is not a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I
What are we talking about here?
it's unbelievable. Like, I mean, it just shows how political things have come to a degree in the definition of the world, right? Nothing to do with politics, but like it's just people take their own personal agendas into a vote, right? Whether they like or dislike him. But how can a guy that's been part of eight Super Bowl winning teams and six of those as a head coach not be a first ballot. If that's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, I don't know what is. I mean, I think one of the reporters was saying they need to go start removing busts from the Hall of Fame because if he's not qualified to be a Hall of Famer, I just don't know who is. That's just it's sad in many ways. There almost needs to be an investigation. I think if the NFL just needs to investigate this situation because it's just crazy. And whatever's going on in his personal life is irrelevant. Whatever his record is at North Carolina is irrelevant. And if your opinion was more a Brady thing than a Belichick thing, that's still irrelevant. We talk about scoreboard, right? We're going to talk about scoreboard with relation to Drake May in a minute, right? Like you got scoreboard, that's what matters. And that's the most dominant run in NFL history by a head coach. It's crazy.
I would be more in favor of discussing naming the Hall of Fame after Bill Belichick rather than not making him a first ballot. I
I
mean,
mean, I'm
like
not a fan,
literally,
right? Like, I could care less about Bill Belichick and the
I
Patriots
don't
and
like
any of
the
those
guy.
guys.
I'll go as far to say I
Yeah,
don't
I'm not a
particularly care for the
fan,
guy.
but it's just, it's insanity.
He's gotta like it's if like you said, if that guy's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, then what next? Who's not? Who is? If he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, who is? I'd be in favor of renaming whatever you want to name in the NFL after the guy. It should be the Bill Belichick Bowl for all I care.
Yeah,
Like is
it's
is the
crazy.
goat. Is the goat. He's the greatest coach of all time. He should absolutely be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That is egregious. As if New England fans are not going to have enough to get upset over when Matt Stafford wins the MVP over their boy Drake May, who we're going to talk a bit about in the next segment here. That's got to have New England just up in absolute arms.
Well, yeah.
Um,
I don't think
honorable
Portnoy has been
mention,
dressed for a whole week.
honorable mention. Well, yeah, I think he's had his fair share of fun these last few weeks. But honorable mention, Shador Sanders is a Pro Bowler, one in the
I,
world. So I drafted him I'm in a dynasty fantasy football league, which means you keep the same team every year. And I drafted him stupidly because I didn't do any research on the rookies and all the guys that I wanted were gone. So I just drafted Shador, kind of as a joke. And so I've been like in the group chat, like every time he throws a touchdown pass, I'll say like Shador Sanders on the block, trying to trade him. And so
it,
today I went in the group chat. I said, I have a Pro Bowl quarterback on the block
there
for
you
you guys.
go. I mean, it's
Uh,
nothing about Shadur. I think he's a talented kid, and I think
I think he's
I think the
overhated, if
jury,
anything, but
I think the jury's still out of him. I'm not sure he's overrated because he gets a ton of hate.
overhated, I said.
Overhated. Okay, I
Yeah,
agree with that. I agree with that comment. Sorry, gotta plug my earphones in here a little better,
you're good.
but just based on his performance this year, it just I get Bo Nix is hurt. Drake May is in the Super Bowl, so he can't do it. But what about Trevor Lawrence? Had a pretty good season. You pick Shadur over Trevor. Maybe Trevor passed too. It's crazy. I gotta believe. I mean, I would think that Flacco would have been a better pick, right? I mean, he actually won some games and balled out, and the stats I bet were better. But kind of crazy. You want a Terzo kick Cots of the week? Just
Why not?
to
Yeah,
throw
throw it
it
in
in
there.
there as a Ron Rivera actually interviewed for the Arizona Cardinals head coaching job. What are your thoughts on that?
Have fun. A lot of good golf in
I don't know
Arizona,
that he's
man.
got any kind of shot at it, but he did interview.
That was a paid golf trip for Ron. He's the perfect guy to hire if you want to go 7-7 and kind of stabilize the tail spinning organization before you actually hire the guy that's going to save you. So go ahead, Arizona. I mean, they're kind of in that situation right now, right? He'll love it down there. He'll love Arizona. There's a lot of good golf.
He's
Just
probably not going to get hired.
what I would do, I think what you should do, you should bring Ron Rivera in for a head coaching interview every year and ask him, Ron, you got any guys you're thinking about drafting? What would you do with the draft pick? And then you can just X those guys out on your draft board if Ron's in them. That's what you should do.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
anyways, let's talk a little Super Bowl. What do you say?
I'd love to. I mean,
All
well,
right.
obviously it's a 2 week break, so we'll do more of a full Super Bowl
Yeah.
pregame scouting report, the whole standard deal later. But yeah, we'll just touch on it quickly here. Maybe more so react to championship games.
Yeah. So reacting to the championship games here, I think overall, um, Pats Broncos was just an awful game. Anybody who's into the whole like there shouldn't be a roof at RFK, you're wrong. That's why you're wrong right there. That sucked. That was no fun. I don't
Yeah,
want to
I
hear about
agree.
football weather. I don't want to hear about defensive football. That was two teams playing bad, and somebody had to win. And when New England kicked the field goal, my friend Chris texted me. He goes, "And that's the final score." And I said, "Ha! They'll probably New England's going to win, but Denver will probably at least kick a field goal. New England goes down, scores a touchdown, whatever. It's one of those games where it looks
Yeah,
less close than it was. No, it was the final score because they literally couldn't play football in that weather. It was so bad.
yeah, especially
Um,
facing the one direction of the field where they were going against the wind. I guess. I mean, it was like you
yeah,
couldn't move the ball, and yeah, it was ugly, and it's hard to kind of you know kicks were going every which way, but through
yeah,
the goalposts. I mean, it's hard to kind of gauge really at the end of the day who was the better team, right? Like honestly,
yeah,
I feel like the ball just bounced the Pats' way, and I'm not taking anything away from them because you just don't know, like you said, because of the conditions, right?
yeah.
And
They let's get
we'll get
into it.
into it. We'll get
Are the
into it.
Pats? You want
Well,
to you
we'll
want
get
to weigh in
into
on
it.
it?
Let's touch on the Seattle game first, and
All
then
right.
we'll come back to
Seattle
that.
was one of the best football games I've watched in a while. I mean, two guys just absolutely letting
Yeah,
it
that was a
fly.
thriller.
Darnold is as good of a quarterback as there is in the league right now. I mean, he is just letting it fly. And I said it.
Oof.
I said it when he played against us. I said it going into the game, and Pop crucified me for it. And then the ball didn't hit the ground for an
I
entire
didn't
half of the
crucify
quarter.
you. I didn't
Were
crucify you. Look,
so upset. Watch the tape. Watch the tape. You were so upset about that. Maybe you don't like that specific word, but you gave me a really hard time about it.
I just think
And
when you talk about as good a quarterback in the league, it's taking it too far. He's playing well, but I think he's playing in a scheme and a coaching situation, and he's playing on a team in general that's just rolling. And so he's
who is
getting tons of
playing?
support.
Who's
I
playing better than Sam Darnold played last week? Who?
I thought the Rams quarterback was better in
Stafford
terms
was
of
that
just the Stafford was out of his
as
mind,
good.
and in terms of the degree of difficulty and what he was doing going up against that Seattle defense and the precision of what they executed, I thought I thought Stafford was the better of the two quarterbacks. But I'm not taking anything away from Sam Darnold. I'm not willing to crown him as the best quarterback in the league. That's all I'm saying. But
I'm
I
not
don't want to take
saying.
away. I don't
I'm
want to
not
take anything away
saying.
from him.
I'm not saying end of the season. Who's the best quarterback in the NFL? You choose Sam Darnold. I'm saying he's playing as good as any quarterback has played in the league this year right now. I think that's a fair statement. But
I give him all the credit in the world. I just, I mean, I think if you were redrafting, I don't think he's very, a free agent draft or something like that, and you made everybody free agents. I'm not sure he's a
I don't
top
think
10
he's
pick.
you don't think
Like
he's a top 10 pick?
I think it's a conversation for another day. We'll have plenty
Okay,
of
we're
off
getting
season
caught.
time. Yeah, we'll have plenty of off season time to do quarterback rankings and stuff like that. I'm sure we will, and those are always fun. Regardless, that Seattle team is rolling. It's
Yeah.
rolling, and I don't think it's a talented bunch. They've got a great running back. They've got a great receiver. They've got top five guys. If you want to throw Sam Darnold in there and some really important roles on offense, they've obviously got a great defense. So you know they're rolling and they're going to be hard to beat in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, for sure. I think overall, like, it's definitely going to be it's definitely going to be New England is God's team this year. Let's call a spade a spade. They're
So
getting
let's
they're getting
ask the
all the
question.
breaks.
Ask the question.
Are the Patriots lucky or good? What do you think, Pop?
I think it's a combination. I mean, I think it's a good football team for sure. I think if you look at the run through the playoffs, I mean, they've run into some fairly fortunate situations. They have a really good defense. Um, but you got to be a good football team to accomplish what they've accomplished, or what they are. What would I call them? A In a normal year, Super Bowl caliber team, a year that would have included, the Chiefs and the Ravens, and I mean, it did include the Bills, but I'm not sure the Bills are at their total best. And they kind of they lost a pretty controversial game to the Broncos. So I think it's a combination. I think they're a good football team, but they've had they've had some good fortune as well. And but at the end of the day, it comes down to a scoreboard, right? I don't think May has played great. I don't know how anyone looks at what he did, and yeah, okay, he made a gutsy run at the end of a game that may or may not have really mattered anyway, and everyone's gonna make that a big deal. But I do think, we talked about it in last week's pod. He's a good player, man. He's got potential to be really, really good, but it hasn't been a great playoff for him. And I think,
He should have lost them the playoffs so many more times than he won them the playoffs.
yeah,
If he had a remotely competent team, if he was facing an all competent team this year in the playoffs, the reality of it is, look, the New England Patriots did an excellent job this season of taking care of what's been in front of them. And that's what got them here. And you can't take anything away from
no.
that. Now I'm going to take something away from it. You played a .388 strength of schedule, which is the weakest since like the 80s. And screw it, yell Super Bowl in my face because you're right. You made it to the Super Bowl. You're 100% right. And May is a good player. He is a good player. He is not the second coming yet. I don't see it yet. I think he's
No,
got all
he's
the
still
tools to be.
ascending.
I think he's a
Yeah.
great player. I think he's still ascending. I think in 2 years, you can be talking about him being an MVP. I think he might be the MVP this year. But you also, it is lucky, just bar none. It is lucky you caught the Chiefs in a year, Pat tore his ACL, the Bills in a year, the whole thing kind of came apart at the seams. Lamar in a year that he was on and off the field, not healthy. The AFC is down this year. You got the AFC in a down year. You didn't even play Bo Nix. You didn't even play the number one seed with the starting quarterback. And Stroud gave that game away more than the Patriots wanted. So that's the reality of it. That being said, they made it to the Super Bowl. They are a very good team. Like I don't take anything away from the Patriots as a whole. I think they're a very good team. I think Drake May has had less to do with it than the defense this playoffs. But Drake May was also flinging the ball all over the yard this year.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
give
you
him
could
credit
look at
where
the
credit's due.
results, right? They put 16 up against the Chargers. They I mean, couldn't be a, he turned the ball over 3 times against the Texans, and it could have been two more. He's been getting sacked a lot, turning the ball over way too much, and they put up, yeah, terrible conditions. So I don't know that, you can look at that Denver game and you wonder neutral site what that looks like. I'm sure there's more points put up. It was tough to judge that one way or another. It just was one of those two teams was going to win ugly. It's almost like, to me, that's almost like it's like when you play golf and you just don't count it against your handicap because it was just an
Yeah,
off
so
day and you
bad.
just don't
Yeah.
record it. Maybe that's one of those in terms of that. But yeah, they've definitely had some good fortune in the path that they've been on. The good news is, though, if they win the Super Bowl, there'll be no excuses, right? Like no one could take that away from them because they are going to go up against a great, Seattle is without a doubt a deserving Super Bowl team. And so if you could go there and you can beat them and, you can have the game of your life, and that certainly could happen, then no one could take anything away from the Pats. Now, what do I hope happens? Is the exact opposite of that, but we'll get into that. I mean, I think why don't you just set it up in terms of the matchup and the current you know
Yeah, I mean, we'll do more of a
point
breakdown
spread
next
and all
week. I don't
that.
want to spend more than another like couple minutes on it, but just
Yep.
early, like Seattle's a 4.5 point favorite. If Seattle plays good football, if they don't squeeze it, if Darnold doesn't make me come on here and eat my words and make me get laughed at by everybody, it does feel a little weird taking an island on Sam Darnold, but I'm willing to do it. Um, if Seattle doesn't squeeze it, New England is not going to be able to get away with playing this like don't lose football that they've been playing this playoffs. This ultra conservative, like don't lose, play it safe, like type of football that they've been playing. They're not going to be able to do that against Seattle. They're going to have to put up a lot of points, and I think Drake May is capable. If he plays like he's played so far in this playoffs, I don't see it happening against that defense. But we'll see. I think that's basically what it's going to come down to: is the moment going to be too big for Seattle? And if not, can New England keep up? And my answer to both of those questions is no. I'm taking the Seahawks. I don't really have a rooting interest in this game, frankly. I just hope it's a good one. And that's why I was kind of bummed that the Patriots are playing because every Patriots game this playoffs has been incredibly unentertaining and boring. And I hope the Super Bowl doesn't go that way.
Well, and I think for them, right, and again, we'll break it down more like next week. They hope to get the bad Sam Darnold at some point, right? That they hope to rattle them and turn them over and do those things. They haven't been able to do that yet. Maybe it's a different situation. Seattle won't be at home, um, but it's going to be interesting. Yeah, the game will be played at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. It's Super Bowl 60. Wow. I haven't seen all the
Crazy.
Super Bowls. That's a good thing. But
There you go.
um, but yeah, I mean, we'll get much more into it on the next episode. I'd say the next episode will be dedicated pretty much to Super Bowl pregame, unless there is more breaking Commanders news that we want to get into.
Sounds good, man. What do you say we wrap this thing up, Pop?
Let's do it.
Let's wrap it up. Without further ado, I've been Dom. Thank you all for another great week and hail to the Commanders.
And to the Commanders and the Mustangs.
Ooh.